I don't have any clue either. Let me press send on this email.
This is the type of stuff people come to Twitter for, Eric.
It is. Welcome to Twitter Spaces, live from Windermere, Florida. And
Is my mic on? Is this working? Can you hear me?
I can. Let me move mine closer, actually, because my audio has been terrible. All right, Kev. Break time. We've been grinding. You're working a bunch of deals. I'm working a bunch of deals. Deals are coming in fast. You know what? We've got a... No, we're good. I got my little thing off. I thought my little icon was still on.
Do you are you seeing do you feel like you're seeing like a change in deals just in terms of like with interest rates higher? And so I'm genuinely curious. It feels like I'm seeing a lot more like there's something about the deal that's a little different than like the old school typical like vanilla SBA backed small business deal. And I don't know if it's just like purely coincidence of like what's coming in my pipeline or what, but it's like, well, this one's moving super fast, or it's not traditional SBA financing, or we're doing the seller note differently than just kind of a typical 5-year term, 10-year amort or whatever. I don't know. Am I just off?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I'm looking at my pipeline. I know that the talking point was like interest rates are rising, so you're going to need more equity.
Yeah.
And maybe, I'm looking at a deal right now that I worked on this morning with a searcher, and his cap table like oversubscribed. He had no problem going out there, and it could be indicative of him. He's a fantastic guy. But he was able to go out there and get a ton of equity really fast. So he's using a lot of equity.
That's encouraging.
I've got a couple of interesting deals where they're real estate guys, and they're like, hey, I'm done with real estate for now, so I'm going to come buy small businesses. And they have these are guys too that have been doing like very large real estate transactions. So they have very sophisticated real estate chops and counsel and everything. And then they're like, okay, now I want to buy a $5 million business. Like, can't use, ABC big firm. So I'm going to come talk to Eric. And those guys are interesting because they're very sophisticated, but they're kind of like cutting their teeth with small business.
Yeah. It's like the private equity clients that, know their stuff, super sophisticated, but sometimes you're like, hey, tap the brakes for a second because working capital's different in SMB land, but yeah.
Yeah, I tweeted earlier about deferred revenue, a really important topic with, subtopic within working capital, trap for the unwary. It got a lot of traction. I think John Wilson had a really good anecdote about like a deal he was looking at with a ton of deferred revenue, upfront subscriptions that, hey, Mr. Seller took cash upfront, whether it's a deposit, a subscription, whatever. And then he thinks he's going to take off with the cash and leave you to do the services. Well, that's a big problem, right? Because somebody has to pay for it, and all of a sudden now you've got to fund operations with money you don't have. So working capital is an interesting area for all of us. And I wrote a thread a few weeks ago about working capital because somebody said that at the IBBA conference, and somebody will have to fact check me on this that was there, they had a whole session on what is working capital. And they were like, let's start with someone give us a definition of working capital. And like, no one could agree on what working capital was. In a room of like 100 deal professionals, they were all arguing over working capital, which is kind of mind-bending. Even within the industry, and I know we've got to play it a little bit differently, and sellers are, you got to be practical with sellers and brokers and whatever else. But like working capital is working capital. Like it's not rocket science.
Yeah, I think it's one of those terms that scares people until you just like sit down with like and explain it like I'm 5 for 60 seconds, and it's like, oh yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, deferred revenue. I mean, I see that pop up all the time, right? And talking to searchers or buyers under LOI and talking through like, well, yeah, we're gonna take all the deposits. Well, okay, well, what does that mean, right? How much of the deposit's actually been earned? How much of the deposit is for for future work if part of that deposit should have been paid over for, you know what I mean? And then you start breaking it down. I mean, it's super easy to get into a trap. And, you know, if you're a little unwitting and end up closing a deal and realize you've got 50% of the revenue on deposit and 90% of the work to do. I mean, that's a tough place to be in. You're going to be in a working capital crunch very quickly after your closing, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could be. You certainly could be. You know, if not just taking a general hit or overpaying, right? I
Right.
think the fear is that they view working, you know, they view deposits as earned revenue, and it's
Yeah.
not. So they're booking that, and yeah, and that's the extent of my financial acumen. So I'm going to stop.
Well, like our other partner is known to say from time to time, working capital negotiations are just purchase price negotiations.
Yeah,
And I think he's spot on. It's a great point, but yeah, watch out for deferred revenue. I candidly, Eric, I'm embarrassed to say it. I totally missed your post this morning, so I would reading it now while we're chatting.
I need one of those Elon Musk chips so that every time I tweet, it's right.
Well, you always put this like flashing red light siren in these
Drop
quotes
off
and
the
in these
road.
tweets.
Yeah.
I'm gonna actually put one on my desk. If Eric tweets, it's gonna blink at me.
I need you in a self-driving Tesla with a chip so that when I tweet, it literally powers it slows your car to a stop and brings the tweet right up here. So
I'd never get anywhere. You're on Twitter way too much, Eric.
touche.
It'd be a 45-minute drive to the gas station down the street. Because, well, I guess if it's a Tesla, I'm not going to the gas station. But you get what I mean. Damn it.
I do. I got you, Kevin. Um, all right. Should we get back to it?
Let's get back to it. I got plenty of work to do.
Yeah.
See you, man.